and there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another incredible installment from very high above all the puerile and insipid and insulting mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Wednesday. Well, it's a pretty happy Wednesday for all of us. However, it may not be all that happy for anybody that works at the Cow Pie, and specifically Gail Simmons. On today's program, there were some shocking comments made on last Thursday's edition of the morning show with Jake in the Cow Pie. Jake you remember that commercial? I'm Jake from State Farm. He's Jake from State Farm. Well, no, this is Jake in the Cow Pie. And of course, you all know what resides in cow pies. And last Thursday was a perfect example of that. So on today's show, we're going to start off with talking about Gail Simmons and what they talked about on that particular edition of the Cow Pie. And I'm telling you, my friends, there is no depth that the left and the redcoats will not go to in this state. Absolutely no depth whatsoever. And they're counting on your ignorance of what happened in the Wyoming's political past to push a narrative on you. Well, I, my friends, am not going to let that happen because a lot of the things that they're talking about, I was sitting in the gallery, and they happened a little bit different than the way that Gail Simmons says they do. So that'll be the first thing on the agenda this morning. It's going to take me a while to go through, but this is extraordinarily important. And so we're going to get right into that. But first, let me just give you kind of the game plan for the rest of the week. On today's show is going to be kind of an abbreviated program. We're going to do an hour, and then I've got to get on the road. I've got some traveling to do this week. And so we'll do an hour today. We'll also do an hour tomorrow from the road, and then we'll do an hour on Friday. Hopefully on Friday we'll be able to figure out a way to rope Agent 29 back in. I talked to him last night, and he said, well, maybe I'll be back on Friday. I don't know. I'm just kidding. He's off doing legislative business, and I appreciate him doing that work for me because, he is my representative. So anyway, that's the game plan for the rest of the week, and I'll keep you updated if anything changes. When you're on the road, you really have no idea what's going to happen. Could be a lot of stuff, but you never know. So anyway, let's see here. Top on the agenda. Gail Simmons in the Cow Pie. Now, last Thursday, Jake in the Cow Pie, I know there's a lot of cow pies going on here, but Jake in the Cow Pie had Gail Simmons on to talk about her most recent column, which was basically a puff piece about Eric Barlow, and not a very truthful one at that. Gail Simmons, of course, is the founder of the Red-Coated Frontier Republicans. Yeah, it's an offshoot group that she created when the liberal Republicans lost power in the Wyoming GOP. She created this group called Frontier Republicans, and you can still go to their website. The website is still active. It's frontierrepublicans.com, I think. But they're all about civility. Yep. And their big problem with conservatives is we call it like we see it. And they don't like that because most of the time the truth doesn't agree with the redcoats, and it hardly ever does. And they'll be the first ones to lie about their record, to mischaracterize it, to try to twist it into something that it's not, which is exactly what Gail Simmons was doing on the morning show. So the topic of discussion was not only Gail's column, but was Eric Barlow's announcement that he's going to run for the governor's mansion. Now, I've done a couple of episodes already about Eric Barlow, and they're pretty shocking. One of them specifically dealt with his pro-life record, which is not good. To put it briefly, when Eric Barlow is in power, when he's the chairman or when he's the Speaker of the House, or whenever his name is not going to appear in not voting for a pro-life bill, he kills it. He either puts it in his drawer or he makes sure that it dies. And there are several examples of that. But the first major pro-life piece of legislation that he had a chance to vote on was the heartbeat bill. And I think that one was back in, I think it was 2015. But the very first chance he had to vote for a piece of legislation that would save the lives of little babies, Eric Barlow voted against it. And there's lots more examples where that came from. Well, I guess where I think we ought to start is we'll just begin at the beginning of the discussion between Jake and Gail Simmons. And I'm telling you, my friends, and by the way, this is one of those episodes that I probably need to, put a parental advisory on. There's going to be some language in today's episode, not from me, but from some of the sound bites that I have to play for you that is probably not going to be suitable for young children. And so if you happen to be at the house and you're watching your kids, or you're at the office, you might want to plug in your headphones and not play this one out loud, because there's some sound bites that maybe many of you probably remember them happening, that are not exactly all that great. So just parental advisory today. I'm going to be playing some sound bites that you may not want to have it blasting out in the office, and you may not want to have your children watch it. So anyway, that proviso aside, Jake and Gail Simmons start out, and here's the most amazing part, is that sometimes when you let people talk, they will eventually tell you the truth, tell you what they're thinking, tell you what they are all about. You just got to let them talk long enough. And that is definitely the case with Gail Simmons. I've interviewed her twice, and in both interviews, I asked her relatively the same questions, and you just let her talk, and eventually she will tell you exactly who she is. And in this interview with on the morning show, she definitely does that, though she doesn't come out right and say it, which is why I'm here with the extensive Cowboy State Politics archive. And I got to tell you, my friends, I was not expecting to have to pull this one out. But since I have to, no problem. Here is how Jake begins the segment with Gail Simmons. And this is shocking because he pretty much admits that he's a Democrat. Now, we all know that he's definitely a redcoat, that he doesn't like conservatives, and that he really doesn't like the Freedom Caucus. I can't tell you how many times I've watched his stupid show, and they've been bashing on the Freedom Caucus. But to my knowledge, not one time had they invited a member of the Freedom Caucus. Not Rachel Rodriguez Williams. Maybe she's been on there once before. But they haven't invited Agent 29. As far as I can tell, it's been a long time since they invited John Bear. Most of the time, it's all the people that just bash on the Freedom Caucus. Unwarranted, I might add, with a complete lack of self-awareness for what they've all done. So here is how Jake begins his program with Gail Simmons. Check this out.
Yeah. Pretty cool. And then this young lady, Gail Simmons, someday we'll be talking about what we're going to name after you, I guess. Your column, so cool because
so cool.
Yeah. I want to like my electeds. I want to like the Freedom Caucus. I want to, I want to be conservative. I want to be Republican, for instance. But man, a lot of the rhetoric that comes out of their camp sounds the same. It's accusatory, it's inflammatory, it's just it's bullet point quote.
They don't know anything.
Cherry pick quotes, and it's just intended to be loud. I think.
All it is.
But your column kind of coming to the defense of Senator Eric Barlow, who recently announced he wants to jump in that.
All right. That's enough. He says everything you need to know right there. I want to be conservative. I want to be a Republican, but you're not. You are a radical leftist Democrat. And as much as you try to hide it, that's what you are, Jake. And, I've given you plenty of rope on this program, but the truth is, my friend, that you're not a conservative Republican, nor have you ever been. I know a lot of people in Jackson, where Jake actually happens to live, a lot of really good, solid conservative people, but Jake is not among them. And he says so right there. I want to be a Republican. I want to like the Freedom Caucus. And anytime you hear somebody say that, you know that the truth is actually the opposite of what they're saying, that he's not a Republican, that he's not a conservative, and that he doesn't like the Freedom Caucus. And, if you just let people talk, they tell you everything you need to know. Well, and their conversation continues. And this next one, I've got to kind of set this up, because Gail's column is definitely trying to defend Eric Barlow in every way, shape, or form. It's a puff piece. There's no substance to it whatsoever. And then she tries to draw a distinction between the leadership of the Freedom Caucus. And by the way, let me just stop right here and just tell you, I'm not going to bury the lead on this story. There's some really shocking things that she says. And right after I get this set up, I'm going to play them for you. So again, this is your 5-minute notice that there's some pretty shocking things coming. Well, anyway, so they're talking about Gail's column, and then she says this:
of all the people to bang somebody else for leadership, I think she needs to look in the mirrr.
But
it's so easy to see, to compare and contrast the two just by going onto YouTube and seeing the way they run committees.
Yeah.
We should do that. And that's all that stuff is still up on the interweb somewhere. We can go back and see that.
Oh yeah, it's all on WyoLedge. They've got a channel and they've got playlists, and you can look at the various ones for the committee meetings during the 2025 session. So it's really easy. But I think back to one of the first times.
Okay, now hold on just a second. Now this is important. You just heard Gail Simmons say, yeah, you can go back and watch all of the video. You can compare the leadership of Eric Barlow, which we're going to talk about his leadership in just a second. It's not what Gail Simmons cracks it up to be. But she says you can go back. You can watch all the video. The irony being, the example she's about to give you, there is no video on YouTube, and so you just have to take Gail Simmons' word for it. Here she is. Check this out.
It may have been the first session that I was down there full time. So it was either 2016, 2017. I can't remember. We were still at the Jonah building. And I remember that he was the chair of labor, and a bill came up, very controversial. It was on abortion. I can't remember what it was. But this is something that people feel very passionate about, whether you're for it or against it. And so those meeting rooms are very small. He arranged for an overflow meeting.
Okay, all right. This segment is going to be so hard for me to do because I cannot stand listening to Gail Simmons. It's just something about her voice irritates the crap out of me. But here's the point in showing you that. The example that Gail Simmons uses to prove that he's got incredible leadership skills and the Freedom Caucus does not is a video is not available on YouTube. There is not a video that you can go and watch what she's talking about. So it's wonderfully ironic that the example that she uses right after she says, hey, this is all available, you can go check it out, is not on YouTube because it was before the legislature started recording all of these videos. I mean, it's her hypocrisy knows no bounds, my friends. Oh, and by the way, here's what she says about Eric Barlow. Take a listen to this. Whoops, that's not the right one. Hold on just a second here. Right. Here we go.
And so the way in which he allows everybody to have a say.
Yeah.
And so ironically, this year, when Larry Hicks stood up and said he shouldn't be chair because I don't agree with his ideology, was like, are you kidding me? Because Eric Barlow is very pro-life.
That's not true at all. Eric Barlow is the most pro-choice elected representative in the Wyoming legislature. There's an entire episode that I did on this, two of them actually. One of them is called The Pro-Life Bills in Eric Barlow's Drawer, and one of them I just did the other day, exposing his incredibly his voting record on pro-life bills is actually pretty interesting. And like I said earlier in today's program, when his name is going to be on it, when it's going to be obvious that he voted against something, he doesn't vote for it. Or he votes in favor. When he's in power, when he's the chairman of the committee, or when he was the Speaker of the House, every single pro-life bill that he could stuff in his drawer, he did. And there's a long list of them, my friends. The truth is that Eric Barlow is not pro-life. And if you listen to his campaign announcement where he said he was running for governor, the entire thing he said was complete bullcrap, because there is demonstrable, verifiable evidence to the contrary on every single one of those. The truth is, my friends, that Gail Simmons, founder of the Frontier Republicans, radical redcoat liberal Republican, and that she is, all you have to do is read her columns or listen to what she says. And she explains it very clearly that she's a very liberal Republican. They absolutely want Eric Barlow to be the governor because he's really a Democrat. In the last decade, his voting record shows that he votes with the Democrats over 81% of the time. My friends, if you are 81% of anything, you're that thing. And there's no getting around it. The truth is, most years, Eric Barlow votes 85% of the time with the Democrats. So, of course, Gail Simmons wants him. So, enough of the whole setup. I mean, you get the tenor of what they're talking about. The whole point is that it's to bash the Freedom Caucus and to stand up for Eric Barlow. And, and I just want to play this one for you real quick, because Gail Simmons says that, everybody's got to hold themselves accountable. Listen to this, because that involves you too, Gail. Here we go.
And again, another quality of leadership is holding people accountable and holding yourself accountable.
Hold yourself accountable, Gail, because what's about to happen to you, you need a lot of accountability. So here is a piece where she starts talking about a story in which there was a hot mic moment in the Wyoming legislature. It was in 2021 during the special session in October, and the Steve Harshman was in Casper in a school. And in just a second, I'm going to play for you exactly what he said. Well, I've had to edit it a little bit, bleep out some of the words, but he was in a school and caught on a hot mic. Now, here's the way that Gail Simmons says it. Check this out, right here.
A former Speaker of the House. I hate when I forget people's names.
Yeah, I hate it too. Yeah.
Anyway, they are clearly great colleagues, good friends. And there was a dust up again because of a hot mic moment. Steve Harshman.
Yeah.
Where a comment was made, which, by the way, was not inaccurate. He was talking about the current Secretary of State, but it was a hot mic moment. It was inappropriate.
That part is really important. She says it was a hot mic moment and a comment was made about the Secretary of State, which was not inaccurate. Here is what Steve Harshman said on that hot mic. Now, again, if you're in the office, plug in your headphones. If you got little kids around, maybe you want to chase them out of the room, because here you go. Here is that hot mic moment from Steve Harshman.
I just think it's really difficult and kind of murkies the bill, even if the intent is good.
Little
Did you hear what he said?
We've got somebody online needs to turn off their. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
So
Representative Larson.
So what he said, and let me just play it one more time for you in case you didn't catch it, Gail Simmons, and then we're going to go with what you said, my friend. Here you go.
I just think it's really difficult and kind of murkies the bill, even if the intent is good.
Little tiny.
We've got somebody online needs to turn off their. Thank you.
Okay, so you heard what Steve Harshman said, and of course, I bleeped out the worst parts of it. But just to kind of let's see if I can even do this without swearing. So he uses the F word, and then he uses a homosexual slur, and then he says it again, and he calls Chuck Gray that slur. Now it was Gail Simmons who said that it's not inaccurate. Let's watch what she said again. So remember, I just played for you what that hot mic moment was, and let's see. I think I've got it here somewhere. Told herself accountable, requested apology. Maybe I don't. Okay. Anyway, so let's just play it again. Here's what Gail Simmons said.
A former Speaker of the House. I hate when I forget people's names.
Yeah.
Anyway, they are clearly
God, I
a
can't stand
former
her.
Speaker of the House.
Here we go. Here's what she said.
Comment was made, which, by the way, was not inaccurate. He was talking about the current Secretary of State.
Which, by the way, was not inaccurate. So you heard the hot mic moment from Steve Harshman, where he used a couple swear words, he used a slur, and he applied it right at then Representative Chuck Gray. And you just heard Gail Simmons say,
Comment was made, which, by the way, was not inaccurate. He was talking about the current Secretary of State.
So essentially, Gail Simmons is saying, well, Steve Harshman was right. These things are absolutely true about Chuck Gray. The Cowboy State Daily, Gail Simmons, and Jake in the Cow Pie owe the Secretary of State a formal apology. How dare you have a guest on that uses... And here's the thing, man. Gail Simmons is counting on you not remembering what Steve Harshman said. That's what she's counting on. Because that way she can characterize it. Well, it was just a hot mic moment, and it wasn't quite appropriate. But, he apologized, and everything was good. You want to know what Eric Barlow made Steve Harshman do? Well, he had to apologize to the body, which, by the way, he made conservatives do that all the time for the smallest infraction. There's one case where now Speaker of the House Chip Nyman said the word crap on the floor, and Barlow forced him to apologize. But here you have a hot mic where the F word is used twice and a homosexual slur. And the only thing that Eric Barlow says is, somebody's got a hot mic. Okay, thank you. Now, let me just set this up for you. The reason why Gail Simmons knows that this is the truth is because she was there. She was sitting in the gallery when it happened. And so was I, Gail. My point is, Gail Simmons will lie. She'll manipulate the facts to push her agenda. And that's exactly what she's doing, my friends. Now, the only thing that Eric Barlow did is he says, somebody's got a hot mic. And then 3 days later, he makes Steve Harshman apologize on the floor, and he took away his computer privileges. By that, I mean, he made Harshman actually show up to work, and he couldn't participate on Zoom for the rest of the week. That was how Eric Barlow held people accountable, according to Gail Simmons. The point is, my friends, that the Cow Pie, Gail Simmons, Jake in the Cow Pie, they owe the Secretary of State a formal apology. And there's no getting around it. Gail Simmons said, and let's just play it one more time for you. You know what? Let's just play Steve Harshman, and then I'll play Gail Simmons again. Here's Harshman one more time.
I just think it's really difficult and kind of murkies the bill, even if the intent is good.
Little tiny.
Comment was made, which, by the way, was not inaccurate. He was talking about the current Secretary of State.
By the way, it's not inaccurate. Gail, you're welcome on this program, as you know, anytime you want. And I'll let you explain that statement for as long as you want. But my guess is you don't have the temerity or the courage, I guess those words kind of mean the same thing, to come on this program. And Jake, I would gladly come on your show And we can talk about how you want to be a conservative, how you want to be a Republican, but really the only thing you do is use your platform to bash conservatives, because that's what you do continually. Here's another one from Gail Simmons,
where she got up and
Rachel
literally
Rodriguez
had
Williams.
a point of order to whine about the way somebody looked at her.
That's not true at all. What actually happened is Cyrus Western backed Rachel Rodriguez Williams into a corner and demanded that she vote a certain way. And then when they went to the floor, Representative Rodriguez Williams called a point of order. That's what happened. But if you listen to Gail Simmons' version of it, Representative Rodriguez Williams was just complaining about the way somebody looked at her. How dare you, Gail Simmons? I mean, there is no depth. There is no bottom to the hypocrisy that Gail Simmons will sink to. Here's the rest of what she said.
But on the floor, complained about that she didn't like the way somebody looked at her. So, I don't want to get personally, because she's obviously a good person. And there are some folks, by the way, in Freedom Caucus that I like a lot. Or that are Freedom Caucus aligned. And I want people to be their own person, and they're not.
And they're not their own person. Oh, my God. And you don't hear any pushback. And, of course, these are all sound bites, but you don't hear any pushback from Jake in the cow pie. Why would he? Because Gail Simmons is saying the exact same thing that Jake believes, too. And it is absolutely amazing, my friends, the depth that these people will go to. The long and the short of all of this is that, again, and I will say it again, when Gail Simmons says that, the comment was made about the Secretary of State, which was not inaccurate. Yeah, we know what she means. We know where she's coming from. And she wants you to believe that comment was just innocuous, that it didn't mean anything, and that it was just a harmless little hot mic moment. The cow pie, Jimmy Orr, Gail Simmons, Jake, you owe the Secretary of State a formal apology. Not that he'll get it, not that I'm expecting one, but the truth is, you got to stop using your platform as the political weapon that you have been using it as. You're not interested in the truth. You never have been. And this is just clear evidence of it. And again, all these people are welcome on Cowboy State Politics. Not that they'll take me up on the invitation, because they won't be able to answer hard questions. And so, I mean, it's just amazing. I don't really know what else I can say except that Gail, Jake, cow pie, you're just absolutely despicable. Well, let's go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, we'll finish up the program.
Ever since gold backing was removed from the dollar, the value has dropped significantly over the past few decades. Experts say this is one of the main reasons goods are more expensive and your savings are worth less each year. How would you know how many dollars to save for retirement if the valuation of the dollar changes over time? Would you work all week for that $20 gold piece? Let's look at the valuation of this coin from the 1970s to today. When President Nixon took us off the gold standard in 1971, this coin traded for about $275. Today, it trades for about $14,000. Buying and holding rare coins using only a fraction of your portfolio is our suggested way to save for the future. Call U.S. Coin Capital at 1-800-878-2646 to get your free United States Gold and Silver Buyer's Guide.
Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Welcome to Lessons in Civility by Morton Buildings. Gentlemen, is your garage completely jam-packed full of all of your unnecessary crap, and your lovely wife has been on your tail, nagging you non-stop to clean it out? It's not because she just wants to incessantly irritate you. Chivalry dictates that you should clear out a space so she can park her car inside and you don't end up sleeping on the couch anymore. To do that, contact Nick and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. Not only are they the experts in metal building construction, they're also skilled at keeping you out of the doghouse. One more time. Their phone number is 307-674-2532, or you can check them out at their website, mortonbuildings.com. This has been Lessons in Civility from Morton Buildings. Welcome back to the program. David Iverson, Cowboy State Politics Live on a Wednesday. Thank you for listening to the show, my friends. And watching the show, too. And you listen to the podcast every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday morning. And then don't forget about the live program, which is published or broadcast every Tuesday through Friday, beginning at 8 a.m. The podcast, which is a deeper dive into what we just talked about, Gail Simmons and the Cow Pie, complete with sound bites. And anyway, make sure you go listen to that. And by the way, if you want to hear that unedited version of what Steve Harshman said on the floor, right after today's show, I'm going to put a link at my website, cowboystatepolitics.com, on the show content page, and you can listen to the whole thing, and you can hear him use the F word in it. But, I have standards, and I'm just not going to play that on the program. And I haven't ever done that in the past, and I'm not going to continue doing it now. Certainly not for Gail Simmons, and certainly not for Steve Harshman. So I went ahead and opened up the phone lines. So if you want to talk about Gail Simmons or anything else for that matter, go ahead and give me a call. The phone number is 307-374-8989, 307-374-8989. Now, I've been wanting to talk about Donald Trump's executive order on burning the flag, and I have a lot of mixed feelings about it. Since 1989, I think it has been. Burning the flag was considered free speech. But there again, you do have the freedom to say whatever you want, but that doesn't excuse you from the consequences. Oliver Wendell Holmes said that you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. Well, that's not entirely true. You can yell fire in a crowded theater. Everybody has the freedom of speech. And if you want to do that, you can. But that doesn't excuse you from what happens afterwards. And by that, I mean, if your actions cause a riot, or if whatever you do infringes on the rights of another person, then, my friend, you are responsible for that. And so that's why we have phrases like reading the riot act, and why they tried to go after President Trump. You remember that whole thing, January 6th? They tried to accuse him of riling up the crowd. That's what they were getting at. So while you do have the freedom of speech and freedom of expression, you're not immune to the consequences. But that being said, I think sometimes, most times, we should err on the side of liberty. That when there is a questionable situation where there's a sticky point that it could go either way, I think that we should just err on the side of more expansive liberty. Because here's the problem with the riot act, riot codes, inciting riot, whatever, however you want to characterize it. is where's the line between speech and harmful speech? And by the way, I don't think there is any harmful speech. That was a really inartful way to put it. Where's the line between your freedom of speech and inciting a riot? Where is that? I mean, how do you determine if what somebody says was the cause of a riot? Similarly, how do you determine when somebody is burning a flag as a statement, that is their freedom of speech, or that they're using it to fire up the crowd? Now, maybe an analogous example or an analogous analogy, yeah, that was repetitive, might suffice here. The Black Lives Matter riots that we saw a few summers ago, pulling down a statue. Now, that's property destruction. That one's clear, and it's easy. But what about raising up the Palestinian flag? Lowering the American flag, burning it, and then throwing up a Palestinian one. Is that speech? I think we could all probably agree that though we find it reprehensible, that's probably speech. Now, there's a piece in Just the News, and there's also one in the Cowboy that I'm going to get to here in just a second. But this one in Just the News, it's entitled Trump's Executive Order to Protect the U.S. Flag Hits at the Heart of Culture. And I quote, following multiple cultural movements across the country that resulted in flag stomping and burning, President Trump signed an executive order on Monday protecting America's most iconic and recognizable symbol, the American flag. Quote, our great American flag is the most sacred and cherished symbol of the United States of America and of American freedom, identity, and strength, the order states. Trump has a demonstrable affection for Old Glory. We've all seen the photograph of him hugging the flag and kissing it. Now, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton spoke to Just the News about the order. Quote, he loves this country. He built his business and his family's done well here. He knows the stakes that we're in and protecting the country. And so we've had men and women die for centuries, for 2 centuries, actually, to protect that flag and the freedom that the flag represents. And I think you can see when he talks about it, he believes in that. The executive order instructs the Attorney General to aggressively pursue legal action against flag burning when it incites violence or violates laws, such as disturbing the peace. And imposes a 1-year imprisonment without early release and permitting visa cancellation or deportation for foreign nationals who deface the flag under certain circumstances. The problem here is that Donald Trump cannot, he can issue an executive order. And the only thing that it really says is it tells Pam Bondi to aggressively pursue anybody that burns a flag. But as I said before, my friends, we need to err on the side of liberty anytime there's a question of, is this freedom of speech? Is this freedom, or is this a crime? Now, there's very clear statutes that talk about property destruction and criminal behavior. But is there a bright line between flag burning, which I guess if it's your flag and you want to burn it in the backyard, that wouldn't make any sense, because the whole idea behind burning a flag is to make a statement. But my personal opinion on this, I think that we should err on the side of liberty. And while it might be infuriating, while it might make a lot of people, it personally pisses me off. I've been listening to Steve Harshman too much. Got to tighten up the language here on the program. But while it might irritate the crap out of you, I think that we should just we should err on the side of liberty. Now to the cow pie. Wyoming senators cheer Trump's order against flag burners, but is it legal? Now, Claire McFarland does the perfunctory talking to John Barrasso and Cynthia Lummis. In fact, she quotes him a couple of times. Let's see here. Let's find out where it's at. So, well, maybe I'll get there. Let me just read a little bit of this. And so we can get an order. So published on Monday, talks about the order, calls for the U.S. Attorney General to prioritize prosecution of the nation's criminal and civil laws against the American flag desecrations. Some of the examples, says the order, are peace disruptions, property destructions, hate crimes, and illegal discrimination cases. Now, all of those are already crime. You can't, it's like, if you hit somebody in the nose, does it make it any worse if you don't like the person when you hit them in the nose? Well, obviously, if you like them, you wouldn't punch them in the nose. So it doesn't make the crime any worse, which is the problem with hate crimes. And I'm going to use this example because I think it's illustrative. A lot of states have hate crime statutes that, well, you committed a crime, because a person is black or because they're Asian or whatever. Well, just because of the color of the skin of your victim, it doesn't make the crime any worse. You still committed a crime. Assault is assault is assault. It doesn't matter if you're black, white, or any other color for that matter. It's still assault. And the whole idea behind a hate crime is to try to get to the motivation behind whatever you did. You know, whether it's an assault or a murder or something worse. But we don't prosecute people for feelings in America. We don't prosecute people because they're racist and they don't like black people. Yeah, well, that's a reprehensible idea. And while I think that the vast majority of people would find that absolutely disgusting, it's not a crime. It's your freedom to believe that way if you want. Similarly, the reason behind burning your flag doesn't matter either. If you're not harming the rights of another person, then we ought not prosecute you. The only, and go back to the harms principle from John Stuart Mill. In this one, it works perfect, that the only acceptable use of government force is to prevent harm, actual harm to another person. Well, if you're just burning your own flag out in public, are you really harming anybody else? The answer to that is no. Now, if we can prove, and this is the big problem, is I don't know how you prove this, but I suppose if you could prove that your burning of a flag inciting a riot which led to property destruction or other people getting hurt, well, then it's the responsibility of your actions that incited the riot. It's not necessarily just burning the flag. Because, I mean, if you're standing out in a crowd and you just burn a flag, chances are you're probably going to get beat up. At least you would in Wyoming. But I don't think that it's necessarily, I don't think that divorces it from it being your freedom of speech. Now, of course, in the cow pie's fashion. Now, remember, the cow pie wants to be conservative and they want to be Republican, but they're just really not. The rest of Claire McFarland's piece, she talks to a bunch of leftists that claim that Trump's order is just a bunch of bupkis. The first guy she talks to is this guy named Eugene Volokh, a distinguished research professor at UCLA School of Law and organizer of a libertarian-leaning law blog called The Volokh Conspiracy, said Monday that the order's purported guardrails don't go far enough to protect the First Amendment's promise of freedom of speech. That's because the president is bootstrapping anti-speech enforcement to laws that have nothing to do with speech. Quote, content-neutral laws banning theft of government property or starting fires in brush fire danger zones are constitutional precisely because they are content neutral. That means the government can police those actions because the government doesn't hinge its enforcement on what people say while they're doing it. Trump's attack on flag burning is, quote, uniquely offensive and provocative, and is a content-based, indeed viewpoint-based enforcement policy. Okay, well, we know where this guy stands. Now let's go down to the guy that, let's see. Oh, I just found, all right, so here's what U.S. Senator John Barrasso said. This is the quotation I was looking for earlier. Quote, in Wyoming, we honor the American flag. We don't desecrate it. Oh, this is Lummis. In a Monday email, our flag is not just fabric. It's the living symbol of freedom and liberty. Okay, all of that doesn't matter. It's a question of your freedom of speech versus burning the flag. So none of that really has anything to do with the executive order. Here's what Barrasso says. The American flag is a symbol of freedom and independence. Our brave soldiers fight to defend our flag, blah, 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 every day. And then he ends it with America's flag must be treated with respect. I agree, but that still doesn't mean that burning it invades the rights of somebody else. Now, if, of course, you use the flag and that is the one thing that sets off a crowd and then there's a riot, well, then, yes, I would say that commits crime. But then how do you prove that? How do you prove that burning the flag, as reprehensible as that is, was the main cause behind that riot starting? I mean, it may very well have been, but I don't know how you prove it. And so this is why, my friends, that I say we should err on the side of liberty, that we should, even though it's questionable, even though we don't like it, even though we find it reprehensible, even though people have died to protect it, it is still speech. And I don't know how you divorce the speech from the action. And again, in America, we don't prosecute people for what they think or what they believe. We prosecute people for what they do. And that's the long and the short of it. Now, the rest of Claire McFarland's piece, and this is just further evidence of how leftist the cow pie actually is. She talks to this guy named Travis Helm, who specializes in immigration work. Well, of course, he's biased. And he says, quote, "I don't even feel like legal terminology applies," says Helm. "It's just more rampant authoritarianism." That Claire McFarland actually wrote that out on her computer is shocking. That she actually put that in an article to try to discuss this executive order shows you the lack of depth of anything that the Cowpie puts out. I mean, it's just another example of them not really being honest. Well, I guess maybe they are being honest with their audience, that they're just blatantly leftist, that they're just blatantly Democrat. Here's how she ended it. Quote, he, that is this Travis Helm person, quoted the late Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia, who once said, quote, "If it were up to me, I'd put in jail every sandal-wearing, scruffy-bearded weirdo who burns the American flag. But I'm not king." Helm looked out onto the streets of Laramie and contemplated leading a flag burning, he said, but it was raining. We're not talking to people that are level-headed about this thing. We're not discussing whether or not it's a question of speech versus action. I mean, obviously, the burning a flag requires action. I mean, you gotta light the lighter or whatever. But if it's your personal flag, if you're the one that paid for it, if you bought it, if you didn't steal it from anybody, if you didn't take it off a flagpole, then there in no way does that invade the rights of anybody else, nor does it in and of itself create any sort of action that might be a crime. And so even though maybe in some way, somewhere, somehow that may incite a riot, we should err on the side of liberty. Well, we're gonna take another quick break, and then when we come back, I'll finish up the program. Back in a minute. Are you tired of all the meaningless political drivel floating around right now? Endless commentary that really doesn't have anything backing it up? Do you long for the days of true investigative journalism coming from an authoritative source who really doesn't care how popular and apparently good-looking a politician is? Fortunately for you, that's what I do on Cowboy State Politics. New episodes are published every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and you can get them anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest way is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There, you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles I might bring up during the course of the program. Cowboy State Politics Live, the program you're listening to right now, is broadcast every Tuesday through Friday, beginning at 8 a.m. Pay attention to all of that other block-headed nonsense if you want. Just make sure that you don't miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live. I'm your host, David Iverson, documented to be almost always right 99% of the time. I just happened to look at some of the comments underneath the live video on Facebook. Let me just address a couple of them. One of the questions was whether or not flag burning is arson. Well, arson, if you're burning your own flag, I don't know if that necessarily applies. Now, again, if you're burning somebody else's flag, well, that's a different crime. That's called theft. And then destruction of property, which, again, those are already crimes. And then another comment, you can't just set a fire on a sidewalk without legal containment. Well, that's true. And if you are, again, that's another crime. So we already have a multitude of statutes that deal with a lot of this stuff. But again, I think in the spirit of free speech, I think when there's a question, when it's difficult to determine whether or not it's speech or whether it's some sort of crime, whether it's inciting a riot, which I don't know how you would prove that, we should err on the side of liberty. That's just my personal opinion. I think in the hard cases, the West, yeah, I would say that Gail Simmons might be one of the hard cases, but that would be giving her too much credit. But I think when there's difficult questions like that, we err on the side of liberty. You know, for example, Benjamin Franklin said that it is better that 100 guilty people go free than one innocent man go to jail. I mean, paraphrasing, of course. But that's how we look at things in America. You have to be proven beyond a reasonable doubt to be guilty of an action. And if there is a reasonable doubt, then we set that person free. It doesn't mean that they're immune from any sort of lawsuits. And maybe that's the best way to handle this is in the civil court. Like, I think it's really hard to prosecute somebody for, a criminal act, unless, of course, it's arson or, you're breaking some other sort of ordinance. In that case, yeah, go ahead and prosecute them. Sometimes cops hand out jaywalking tickets even though I think that's kind of a ridiculous offense. But, if there's other offenses we can charge, yeah, let's go to it. But when it gets difficult to decide, I think we just err on the side of liberty. So anyway, my friends, we've got about 10 minutes left in the show. And by the way, if you want to weigh in on Gail Simmons or flag burning or anything else, the number in the studio is 307-374-8989, 307-374-8989. Go ahead and give me a call, and we'll talk about it. But we got about 10 minutes left. So let's see here. What else do I have in the stack of stuff? Well, let's see here. I got a number of stories. And show prep is kind of weird because you put a bunch of articles together and you think, okay, I might want to talk about this one. This one might flow a little bit here or there. It might fit well, but you never really know. And if you'll notice, like right here, there's no stack of stuff on my desk. It's because I didn't go get printer cartridges. But anyway, so there's a piece in, let's see, I think this was published on... may have been The Blaze, but it's entitled, "If Your Husband Has One of These Jobs, He's More Likely to Cheat," says a study. It turns out, quoting now, there is a certain breed of men who continue to cheat on their loved ones, and it has to do with the type of job they have or the lack thereof. According to a new study conducted by the Institute for Family Studies, in a blog post, men in high-powered positions like CEOs, surgeons, or physicians, and those unemployed. So you've got a really important job or you don't have any job at all, you're more likely to cheat on your spouse. Writer Wendy Wang studied occupational data from the General Social Survey to conclude that 18% of men in top positions have been unfaithful in their marriage. I would say that's probably a deeper problem than just what occupation you have. Maybe you don't have any values. Maybe you aren't very good at keeping promises. But I think that there's probably a deeper problem at play here than just where you work. On the flip side of things, unemployed men 25 to 54 are more likely to have extramarital sex, since about 1 in 5 have already cheated. Let's see here. Where does it talk about women? Studies have shown, let's hear, men. Oh, yeah, I know. Wendy Wang just kind of doesn't really like men. The whole point here, my friend, is there's a lot of studies out there like this that, okay, maybe they correlate. Correlation does not indicate causation. So just because a CEO happens to cheat more than your everyday laborer, that doesn't mean that there's more proclivity for them to do so. It just means that maybe they don't have any morals. So the Colorado legislature, speaking of no morals, votes to fund Medicaid costs for Planned Parenthood. And this one's also in justthenews.com. Quote, "The Colorado legislature has passed a bill that funds Medicaid reimbursements for Planned Parenthood and others who provide reproductive health care services, including abortions." The Colorado House voted 43-19 on Sunday in favor of Senate Bill 25B-2, following the Senate's approval Friday. The Democratic majorities in the two houses support the bill. Republicans oppose it because of its approximately $4.4 million cost per fiscal year. Not because it kills babies, but because it costs too much. again, bias in the media, and most of the time, justthenews.com is pretty fair. Let's see here. SB 25B2 directs the Department of Health and Care Policy and Financing to use money from the state's general fund to provide Medicaid reimbursements to entities that are denied money from the federal government. So, in other words, if the federal government won't pay for you to kill a baby, then the state of Colorado will. I mean, my friends, is there no end to any of this stuff that we can't just take, what the spirit of the law says and go with it? No, we got to find a way around it. And, when it comes to these states and abortion, one of the things that amazes me is their willingness to kill a baby. And I think it's got some really evil undertones. And we have killed probably around 65 million babies in this country. And there are people, Democrats mostly, and there's some people who claim to be Republicans that are also pro-abortion. But we've got to stop this. 65 million babies that we've killed since, Roe v. Wade was first conjured up out of thin air. I mean, just absolutely incredible. Well, we've got a couple minutes left. Here's one that I want to end on. I often play for you videos from this Scott Jennings character. He's like the only conservative at CNN. But on CNN, they were trying to discuss what conservatives want. And it's just a good video to end the show with. So we'll go ahead and do that. Check this out. I mean, this is a classic view inside the mind of people that run CNN and liberals in general. Check this out.
CNN senior political commentator and former senior advisor to Mitch McConnell, Scott Jennings, and former Hillary for America senior aide and Democratic strategist Joel Payne. Gentlemen, good Sunday evening to both of you. Thanks for being here. Scott, I want to start first with you and what Julia was just talking about, these plans to send troops into Chicago. Historically, conservatives, Republicans, have favored state and local governments over the federal government. This, in this case, will be going against the wishes of a local government, of a state government. How do you kind of square that circle?
Well, also historically, conservatives have not favored high murder rates, and conservatives have not favored high levels of illegal immigration. In the state of Illinois, there may be as many as 500,000 or more illegal immigrants. I suspect half or more than half live in Chicago. So in addition to having over 250 murders this year, you've got high levels of illegal immigration. In the president's view, it's an emergency, and it's part of his overall presentation to the American people when he got elected. I'm going to crack down on crime. I'm going to crack down on illegal immigration. They've had great success with this in Washington, D.C. I grant that Washington is a different case because it's a federal zone. Chicago is, of course, a city in the state of Illinois, and I'm sure the Democrats there don't want Donald Trump to come in and clean up all their messes. It makes them look terrible. But I'm certain the residents would love to have less violent crime and less illegal immigration. And so I'm not surprised the president's moving forward with it. And I think he's likely to have success with it the way he did in Washington, D.C.
Exactly right. But did you get the question? How do you square that circle? We're all in favor of local control, but this isn't local control. Well, the truth is, Washington, D.C., as Scott Jennings rightly pointed out, is under federal control. That it is not a part of any other state. And so, Donald Trump sending in the National Guard to clean it up, that's entirely appropriate, my friends, as he should. And the whole point here is the Democrats continue to play politics, and they don't really give a crap about what you want. They don't care what your own personal thinking is on any of these things, and they're only interested in the politics and gaining more power. But that's what Democrats do. That's what Gail Simmons does. That's what Jake in the Cow Pie does. Well, we burned up a busy broadcast hour, my friends. I got to get on the road. Well, first, I got to put the podcast out. Make sure you don't miss it. And then get on the road. But I'll be back tomorrow for another 1 hour program. We'll do that tomorrow morning, as we always do. But for now, from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio, I'm David Iverson. This is Cowboy State Politics. Have a good afternoon, my friends. I'll see you tomorrow.